Hi, everybody. I'm Vladimir Duterte. Anne-Marie Green will join me in just a moment. Turning now to Capitol Hill, where President Trump's historic impeachment trial officially kicks off tomorrow with opening arguments. Ahead of it, Democrats are intensifying their demands for new witnesses to testify in the Senate. They're ramping up pressure on Republicans to join them. But Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has voiced opposition, arguing that was the House's job. He also says he wants a quick trial. Meanwhile, at the White House, President Trump's legal team is slamming the entire process. His lawyers released a memo over the weekend saying the articles are a, quote, brazen and unlawful attempt to overturn the results of the 2016 election. They also released a new brief earlier this morning defending the president's actions. Natalie Brand takes a closer look.
The president's legal team is offering a preview of how they plan to defend President Trump during the Senate impeachment trial.
This is an entirely partisan and therefore illegitimate effort by House Democrats to remove a president from office.
The president's team filed a legal brief today saying the Democrats' charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress are not impeachable offenses. They also say the impeachment process was flawed and didn't allow the president to defend himself. And they claim Democrats were not seeking the truth, only looking to find a way to drive President Trump out of office.
Where is the crime? Low, medium, or high? Where is the crime? This is not Bill Clinton lying under oath to the grand jury in August of 1998.
House impeachment managers returned to work today, preparing for the start of the trial. Over the weekend, they filed a brief saying the president should be removed from office to, quote, eliminate the threat that the president poses to America's national security.
Any jury would convict in 3 minutes flat that the president betrayed his country by breaking the law.
The Senate trial gets underway at 1 p.m. Tuesday, and the first order of business will be to debate and vote on a resolution outlining the rules of the trial. Democrats say they need to hear from 4 current and former administration officials who have information about the decision to hold up funding for Ukraine.
We are going to demand votes, yes or no, up or down, on the 4 witnesses we've requested and on the 3 sets of documents we requested.
President Trump responded on Twitter saying they didn't want John Bolton and others in the House. They were in too much of a rush. Now they want them all in the Senate. Not supposed to be that way.
All right, Natalie Brand is joining us now from Capitol Hill. So, Natalie, what are the biggest takeaways from this official trial memo released by President Trump's legal team? And what kind of insights are we getting into the strategy looking ahead?
Well, Vlad, a number of the arguments outlined in this new brief are arguments that we've heard before, that the congressional impeachment inquiry was rigged and lacking in due process and did not adhere to precedents of past impeachments. And they've also argued that the articles allege no crime or violation of the law, arguing that that doesn't approach the constitutional threshold for removing a president from office. So I think we can expect to hear a lot about those 2 key arguments as the president's defense team moves to present this argument on the Senate floor in coming days. And interesting, they've also used some of the president's own language in, again, calling this a rigged process and also arguing that this is a political tool to overturn the result of the 2016 election and arguing that it's an attempt to interfere in the 2020 election, which, interestingly enough, is a similar argument on the other side among House impeachment managers, that the president was trying to interfere in the 2020 election in, they argue, trying to pressure Ukraine to open up a politically motivated investigation into the Bidens. And House managers argue that the president, for this reason, is an immediate threat and that this is precisely what the founding framers were worried about.
And Natalie, as you pointed out in your piece there, the president in that tweet essentially saying they didn't want John Bolton and other witnesses he's referring to in the House of Representatives. Now they're in a rush to get them. Democrats continue to call for more witnesses. Is the White House prepared for perhaps 4 Republican senators voting in favor of having more witnesses? And then where would the president's legal strategy be?
Well, we've heard from Senate Republicans that they are really united in hearing opening arguments across both sides first. So while we've had a few Republicans, moderate Republicans, or also Republicans potentially up for tough re-election fights, signal that they could be open to hearing additional witnesses, potentially new evidence in the Senate trial, they want to hear both sides present their cases in detail first, also have maybe a written question period, and then decide on the question of witnesses. What's going to be interesting to see tomorrow is what kind of strategy do Senate Democrats employ in forcing amendments right away on hearing witnesses at the start of the Senate trial. We know from what we've learned in reporting over the weekend that the senators themselves cannot or will not be arguing the rules resolution. That will be up to the House impeachment managers and the president's legal team. So we can expect to hear them really making the case for what this trial should look like. But then we know that senators can offer motions or amendments. They can't necessarily argue for those amendments, but they can make the amendment and then force a vote on the Senate floor. So we can potentially expect to see senators have to take a vote on witnesses as early as Tuesday, but then the question becomes, do they have the votes to hear those witnesses right away? And from our reporting so far, it doesn't seem that that's the case, that if there is a vote in favor of witnesses, in favor of Republicans voting with Democrats to hear from witnesses, that would come later on in the trial after the initial presentations.
And I guess, Natalie, the point needs to be made that if the Democrats do get their wish and allow for witnesses to appear in the Senate trial, we threw up a list of some of the potential witnesses, including the acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, John Bolton. But now that opens the door for Republicans to also call witnesses. And you've heard time and time again the president of the United States, say that he would love to see the former Vice President Joe Biden on the stand. He'd love to see Hunter Biden and others. Are Democrats prepared for that possibility?
Well, I think Democrats, their number one goal at this point is hearing from some of those key current or former White House officials who could have more information about the decision to withhold military aid from Ukraine. So then the question becomes, do they allow, other Republican desired witnesses in reciprocity? We'll have to see. But I think first and foremost, they want to hear from those key officials. And if you talk to, the House managers about why those witnesses did not appear during the House impeachment inquiry, they would say those officials were blocked and we did not want to tie up this process in the courts for months or years. Whereas the Republican senators have argued that, well, this should have already been addressed in the House investigation, and it's not our job to re-litigate the entire impeachment inquiry during the Senate trial. So you have a lot of different arguments across the two sides, and at the end of the day, I think it really depends on how compelling are the cases presented by the president's team and the impeachment managers. Does that lead to new questions, or are senators' minds already made up on the Republican side in terms of how this ultimately is going to end up?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting and historic day tomorrow, Natalie, as this trial gets underway. Although we do have sort of a loose understanding of how things expect to play out, there's still a lot of variables, as you point out, still a lot of unknowns, and it will just be interesting to see what decision the senators, both Democrat and Republican, make in the days and weeks ahead. Natalie Brand for us on Capitol Hill. As always, Natalie, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.